Good morning, everyone. Welcome again to another episode of CoachesCorner.health. I am one of your co-hosts, Leslie Gadet, mindset and emotional awareness coach for women. I work with highly motivated female entrepreneurs who have really strong CEO skill sets, but they're lacking a little bit in their self-care, which is in their life and their business to support them overall emotionally, physically, and even spiritually. And so that is who I am. Over to you, Andy.
I love you. I love that. That's awesome. Your introduction is impresses me every time. Hello, everybody. I'm Andy Lidstone. I'm the unconditional coach. I generally deal with boundaries. I help people really figure out how to connect with each other, how to find the kinds of relationships that they're looking for, whether it's romantic or work relationships or with their family or their friends. This is what I do, and we love what we do. And today we got a conversation for you. We got a wonderful one for you. To continue our problem or symptom series, today we're talking about being taken advantage of.
Yes. I actually love this because I think this is something that a lot of people are going to resonate with because I'm sure at some point in our lives, we've all felt like we were being taken advantage of, whether it was true or not. It was
Right.
true to us. So I really am looking forward to what we dive into this week.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great conversation. It's like you said, it's one that a lot of people I think can relate to because a lot of us have felt taken advantage of or do even currently feel taken advantage of in our lives. And I like it as a part of the problem or symptom series because sometimes that's true. We're just, being overly generous and we found somebody in our lives that is overly needy and therefore they're taking advantage of our generosity. And that
Mhm.
is actually what's happening. And sometimes it's not actually what's happening, or it's only a version of what's happening, and there's something deeper going on, either a self-worth issue for ourselves or a self-worth issue for someone else. And those relationships, those situations can get pretty complicated sometimes.
Mhm.
So yeah, we got a great conversation for you today. How do you define taking advantage of, being taken advantage of? How would you define that?
I guess it really depends on the level of what we're talking, like what, why we feel we're being, like the reason behind it. Meaning, I know that we had a conversation quite a few months ago around just a specific relationship that I had with somebody else who
Mm-hmm.
were no longer actually connected. We don't speak, although we're still connected socially on social media. We don't really connect at all. I have tried to reach out, but that's just because I really truly believe that relationships are important regardless of who's right, who's wrong, or
Yeah.
whoever believes they're right or who's wrong. But in that particular conversation we had, I felt that my giving of information freely of my processes of how I've navigated life, or the space to listen, I was really being taken advantage of. And
Right.
learning, as we talked about it, there was one of the conversations that came up was around boundaries and how to incorporate those types of boundaries in those types of relationships. But for me, I think being taken advantage of, it really can be so many different, in so many different levels, so many different ways of how someone perceives being taken advantage of, whether it's of your time, whether it's because you don't say yet, you're not a no person, you're more of a yes person. So when someone asks you for
Right.
something,
Yeah.
they know immediately that your answer doesn't include the word no. And so that could then over time make you feel like you're being taken advantage of. And that could be true, or we've talked about this before, and I think we'll dive
Yeah.
into it a little bit, but it's really, is it because someone is taking advantage of you or feels more confident and secure in your abilities? So yeah, for me, that was something I think is really, is it because you're truly being taken advantage of, or someone is banking on you to say yes because they know you've always said yes in the past, and they could truly be taking advantage of you or feel confident, more confident and secure in you. That's how I look at being taken advantage of. So what
Right.
about you?
Yeah, and I like that, because that is true. It is a matter of whether or not they're really generous and they're just letting you, or whether they're taking from you something you didn't necessarily want to give. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the other way I look at that too is sometimes being taken advantage of isn't a bad thing. For example, if I have plenty of extra to give, whether that's money or time or love or whatever things I have, and I have an overabundance of it, like more than I need, um, and I'm giving that to somebody who does need it, who has a shortage of it,
Mm-hmm.
they could be taking advantage of that. But
Mm-hmm.
if they're taking advantage of something that I'm intentionally trying to give, I don't think that's quite the same advantage of. I don't think it's quite the same, quite the same experience as what a lot of say I'm taking advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes we do give generously. Sometimes we give to somebody who has a tremendous, therefore they are taking advantage of that need. But if we have it to give, then it's not the same framework. It's not the same mindset, right? What we're talking about today is somebody who's taking something we weren't really intending to give, or maybe they're taking we intended to give. If we're being generous, or somebody's being generous to us, are we taking what they're offering, or are we taking something they're not offering? Or are they taking what we're offering, or are they taking something we're not offering, or more than we're offering? And that's kind of the question, right? That's what it really comes down to, defining what it actually is. Are they taking something you have, or something you don't have? Are they taking what you want to give, or more than you want to give, right? And so that's really the question you have to answer first. Is it something that you're willing to give, or is it something that you are, that you just haven't said no to? And that's where it can become a deeper issue. So,
Yeah.
like you said, some people just don't have no in their vocabulary, and that can become that is often what somebody who doesn't say no. That's often a symptom of a deeper issue. It's a symptom of a self-worth, or a good enough situation, or I have to do whatever it takes to keep my friends because I'll feel lonely otherwise. Like, it could be a deeper symptom, a symptom of a deeper problem, right? So what actually is going on here?
Yeah, and you actually did touch on that. I really love the fact that you touched on that the maybe not being able to say no, not having that in your vocabulary because you feel like if I say no, I won't hang on to this friendship or this romantic relationship because I'm not saying yes to keep this in my life, to keep this relationship. I'm being taken advantage of could then be a symptom of a bigger problem, right? And
Yeah,
so, yeah, we're talking about a lot of the time people think, oh, well, I'm just going to look at this as my problem without looking at that there could be this is a symptom of something, even of another symptom, which is of a part of a symptom of a bigger problem, meaning like that could
yeah,
be the reason why you feel like you're being taken advantage of is you can't say no. And the reason why you can't say no is because you don't have that self-worth, like you don't believe in yourself, so you don't believe in that you could
yeah,
keep a relationship based on just the merits of the person that you are, or you won't keep a friendship unless you give, because and that's how I listen. I know I'm speaking from experience
yeah,
because it's not necessarily about keeping the friendships, but I often felt as a in the beginnings, especially even as a coach, that if I didn't give more,
yeah,
then like I mean, you know how they say bonuses and extras. If I didn't give like 100, and as I mean, there's only 100%, but everyone always adds on these extra percentages. But say like 110%, that
yeah,
meant, and if I didn't do that, then I wasn't worthy to get from, to get the attention, to sign the clients, to serve my clients, to serve my
yeah.
community. So yeah, I can totally relate to this.
Right, exactly, and I can as well, in relationships and friendships. Like I've said many times before, I struggled making friends as a child. Growing up all the way through school, I struggled making friends. I rarely, if ever, even had friends. So when it came to my adult years, I did all kinds of sacrifices, all kinds of things to keep friendships, to make friendships. I found myself in circles that, frankly, I was embarrassed to be in, ashamed to be in. I found myself doing things that Andy, who was confident, would have never done, right? Just because I felt I had to do those things to become friends. Now, much later in life, I don't regret those experiences because I learned a lot of things from those experiences. I would have never done them, however, had I had that assurance that I was worth something, or that I could keep friendships, or that I could make friends without doing those things. Which I didn't have. So yeah, it does come down to is it a bigger problem, right? I could say no, and I did say no a lot in my younger years, but I didn't want to. I chose not to. I made the sacrifice so that I could make friends, so that I wasn't alone, so that I could find a way to make money, so that I could have the life I wanted to have. And it turned out I ended up in some really horrible situations sometimes. Right? I ended up going to jail for it. I ended up being homeless several times for it. I ended up messing up my attempt at college because of it. I ended up messing several relationships up because of it. It was just a bunch of horrible situations that I didn't need to be in, that I ended up being in because I felt I needed to give. I didn't very often feel taken advantage of. However, a lot of people in my life told me that other people were just taking advantage of me. So other people perceived that about my life.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel it that way myself.
And it's we start to feel that shame because we don't recognize it ourselves when other people are pointing it out to us. It's not necessarily that we have blinders on, but we truly, in that place we find ourselves, if we choose to believe that they're right, then we start down that shame path. Well, what does that say about me, right? Like, why can't I see it for myself? Why am I allowing this to happen to me? And so then you start beating yourself up for it. One of the things I wanted to say about truly, like, really is remarkable about your situation is that through all of your life experiences, especially like you said, you found it extremely hard to keep, to really build those relationships that you had always were looking for.
Yeah.
I love that it never kept you away from your life path. Somehow you were able to find your way to doing what you do, which is helping people in relationships, whether it's peers at work, whether it's friends, whether it's family, whether it's romantic relationships, and not allowing your past of maybe feeling like you could have gotten in your own way and said, you know what, I'll never amount to anything. I can never make friendships. Who am I to actually lead people in through relationships, whether it's whatever type of relationship with it is, and with the boundaries. So I really want to say, like, this is really huge because it's not easy to do what both of us do. Correct. In that we are willing to look back at our life experiences and say, you know what, that was part of my journey and that I can use to help other people. Instead of saying that was part of my journey, that defines me and now I'll never be anything. I can never do anything. I can never have a better life. And so, again, I love that because I think we had a conversation a few months ago just around specific friendships that we both had, where, the only reason why someone would want to be our friend is because they got something out of it.
Right.
And so let's talk about that for a little bit, because I think that could be a big one that people are thinking about. Like, this person is only in my life because of what they can get from me, only of what I can give. And so let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. That does define several friendships in my past, and even current friendships in some cases that I've had. There's a give and take. There's a trade-off. Sometimes people want to be friends because we give them something that they don't get other places, or that they don't get enough of. And that is a way of being taken advantage of. That's a way of other people taking advantage, not just of our money and our time, but of our emotional space. You know, we're generous with our caring and with our attention, and therefore maybe they don't get that other places. So or maybe they don't get enough of it somewhere else. Someone who has their own emotional damage, their own traumas, their own insecurities might want more love and attention. Might want more time, more commitment than other people might want. You know, the commitment of one person might not be enough. The attention of one person might not be enough. Sometimes people are just, because of their own insecurities, they need more than other people might need. And sometimes we have a need to give more than what we actually have. This whole idea of giving 110%, that's real, in that we often feel like we have to give more than what we actually have. We only have 100%, but we have to give more than that. Our 100% is never going to be enough. And that does come down to, sometimes those kinds of friendships.
Mm-hmm. And whether we deserve it, right? I think that was one of the things I had to learn, that I am worthy. I call we have what I call a secret bubble in our head of these secret words that are unspoken, but they're swirling around in our brain. Things about, like, as an example, I used to say that everyone is born to add value in this world, but I also had these words, but me, swirling around in that secret bubble. You know, I always believed that I had to give, in order for me to be deserving of receiving the things in my life that I would get, that I was truly blessed, and grateful for. I had to give more in order to be deserving of that. That was another phrase in my head that was swirling around. I wasn't speaking these words out loud, obviously, but it doesn't matter, because those words still had the potential to influence me in how I showed up. And I think that is when it comes to friendships, especially if we have people in our lives who are taking more than, or we start believing that they're taking, and what am I getting out of it? It's, how do we get ourselves out of that way of thinking? Because obviously we have something that they're lacking. And that could be confidence. That could be like someone asking you to do something all the time. For example, like, my husband thinks of me as his own personal secretary. And I think it's not because he doesn't have confidence in himself to do things. He has confidence in me to do it better. So looking at it that way helps me to realize that I'm not being taken advantage of. It's more like, oh, I can feel, I can feel grateful that he trusts me enough to help him in specific tasks. And so framing it a different way, to changing the narrative, like, oh, he's taking advantage of me all the time because I have these computer skills or secretarial skills that I've been doing for, like, multiple decades. Whereas he's, really only started really getting into, being online and using different apps and things like that for a lot shorter period of time than I have. So I think is really important too. But the friendship part, one of the things I also know, that there are people out there who are takers, that they don't notice or recognize that they are only taking and they're not giving. So is there a way, you think, to insert into their own, like, helping them to recognize their patterns? Because that could help them. They don't know what they don't know. Is there a way to do this in a loving way? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I'm curious.
Yeah, that's the truth. Sometimes it is about what do they need? Like, are they being needy? Do they recognize that they have holes in their life that they want to be filled, that they need to be filled? Or do they just feel inadequate, right? Or feel like not enough, or feel alone or abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing too is sometimes what they need, what they're needy for, what they're taking advantage of, is, as we talked about already, sometimes it's our emotions. Sometimes they can't feel brave, so they use us to feel brave. They take some of our bravery, some of our strength, some of our courage, some of our patience. Sometimes they take some of our emotional. If we feel more emotionally centered than they do, they'll take some of our emotional center. And as a matter of fact, with a lot of my clients, I'll give them some of those things. I'll specifically say, look, I understand you don't believe that this can work right now. I understand you don't believe that you can have this result right now. And I have enough belief for both of us. And I'll believe for you. I'll lend you some of my belief. I'll lend you some of my strength. I'll lend you some of my courage or my patience or whatever the thing is, some of my love, whatever the thing is. And some people will take that without our permission. So it just depends on the dynamics. What is actually going on? Are you giving voluntarily? Are they taking it without choice, without option? And quite honestly, the only way to know is to set up some boundaries. The only way to know is to really specifically decide what it is you want to give, what is it you need in return, if anything, how much you want to give, how often you want to give, and what you're willing to do to give or to prevent that giving. Is to really specifically decide where the lines are and what you're going to do when those lines are crossed and when those lines are respected. That's the only way to know if you're actually being taken advantage of or if there's something deeper going on. Is really to be very, very specifically detailed about what's you're willing to do and what you aren't willing to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So when it comes to romantic relationships, I think this becomes even a tougher question, yes, or maybe a tougher emotional response to it, because that's when we're in friendships. Yes, we give our heart in a different way. Like, we're not in love with our friends, but we love our friends. Right. We care about them. It's the same for our family. But when it comes to a romantic relationship, we go that level deeper. And so I think this particular symptom or problem, really, I think, hits harder and closer. And
yes,
I know that just from personal experience, the first few, years of my marriage, I actually felt a little bit taken advantage of. And I think it was just because I was in my own way or on my own emotions around my own specific circumstances and believed that happiness came externally from the person in my life. I believed that it was that person's, my husband's job to go out of his way to make me happy. I often felt like more motivated and at doing things than he did. And that was my own perceptions of putting that onto him. I was identifying him, and that wasn't really fair. But when you're in that place where you feel taken advantage of because you are in your own head about everything, I think this is like probably the biggest thing that I'm sure, come across with your clients. With this, I'm being taken advantage of, right?
Yeah.
So how do we?
Yeah, just about every client I have has this version of that.
Yeah. So walk us through what that would, whether you feel, or not necessarily whether you feel, but what have you found when it comes to this question that we have? Is it a problem or a symptom? What have you found in some of your journey with your clients when it comes to this?
First of all, when somebody's feeling taken advantage of, it's typically a two-way street. Typically, what happens when somebody's feeling taken advantage of is one person believes they're giving a lot more than they're receiving. And I mean more because especially in romantic relationships, we're not looking for like a measured equality. I do this for you, you do that for me. We're not necessarily looking for that. So we only see an imbalance when it's a dramatic difference, because we're not going into relationships looking for a direct equal exchange. There can be some imbalance and we wouldn't notice, we wouldn't care. And that's okay. But when that imbalance becomes fairly extreme, like a 90-10 exchange kind of thing, or that's what we feel is going on, that's when we start to notice I'm giving a lot more than what I'm receiving. Generally speaking, in my experience, when that's being experienced by one side, it's being experienced by both sides. And generally, that's in almost all cases in relationships, in romantic relationships, it's because both sides, both people have this story, this unworthiness or self-esteem story, low self-esteem story, this idea that I'm not worth anything. However, I can become worth something to you. And if I do enough for you, you will then meet my needs. You'll then do enough for me. So a lot of people who get into relationships are looking for, like you said at the start of your relationship, a lot of people who get into relationships are looking for someone else to fulfill their needs, whether that's happiness or being loved or safety, security, having companionship, having commitment, being worth somebody else's attention. And when you enter in a relationship not feeling worthy of somebody else's attention, it's going to be very difficult for them to give you enough attention to fill that hole. And if at the same time you're giving tremendous amounts of attention to try and fill their hole, it's going to be very difficult for you to fill that up, no matter how much attention you give them. So both sides are doing the same thing. Both sides are giving what they believe is tremendous amounts of their time and energy toward the relationship, toward this other person, but they can't fill it up. Generally speaking, almost all the time, it's because what we're giving isn't what the other person needs. What we're expecting to receive isn't what the other person is good at giving or has abundance of. We might both go into a relationship and I might have, a tremendous amount of time to give you, or maybe I have a tremendous amount of money to give you. So I'll just buy you things, or I'll spend a huge amount of time with you or for you, doing things for you and trying to be around you. But maybe what you have is a lot of love to give. And maybe what you have is a lot of skill sets to offer. So maybe what you're doing is you're loving me, and maybe what you're doing is you're doing things for me, like using your skill set, your high-level skill set for me. But what I want is time and money. What you want is me to use my skill set and to love you. Generally, what you want is what you give. So the thing you're giving a lot of is the hole that's in your life. Generally, the thing that my partner's giving a lot of is the hole that's in his life or her life. Therefore, when we get into these relationships, and I've had clients say this: I only give what I want. Like, why doesn't he give me back what I'm giving him? Well, that's because what he gives is a different thing than what you have. What you both bring to the relationship is something different. The problem is you're wanting what you're giving. And the paradox of this, the difficulty with this, is if what I give is what I want, if I just turned that inward, I'd fill up my own holes. I'd fill out my own spaces. I'd be able to, because I'm really good at giving, say, the love and the skill set, and that's what I need. If I gave it to me, I'd be able to enter this relationship fulfilled. If my partner, if what I have is that time and money, and that's the hole I have, then if I gave it to me, then I could enter the relationship full. and not need. And then we would give and we would, exchange and be happy. This is the paradox of these kinds of relationships. Uh, and I would also suggest that in the very early stages of nearly every relationship, there is some taking advantage of. There is some kind of posturing. What is it that you actually have to offer? What is it that you bring? What is it that I bring? And in healthy relationship, that balances out. Oh, I see what you have to offer, and I like that. I want more of that. And this is what I have to offer, and you want more of that. So good. Let's balance this out, and decide what the dynamics are going to look like in our relationship, and we'll be happy. But in some of these relationships where we're being taken advantage of, often what it is we're trying to get is the thing we give a bunch of. Right?
Yes. I don't know, people, but there was a lot of gold dropped right there. So I hope you had your bucket ready to take it all in. And if you haven't, go back and re-listen to this section because, wow. Okay, I can just say that's why he does what he does, okay, because he can tune into that. So important. I love the fact that you talked about giving to fill their own hole, like what they need, they're giving. So without recognizing, I think that is exactly how I tuned into that. I'm not exactly sure when I first started my own self-development journey, but I recognized that it was, and I truly believe, the inner work that will help us to seek out, be able to like fill our own cup, fill that void ourselves for us. Like, so we start feeling good about us, the person that we are. So we can start looking at how can I serve you where you need, not what I need, but what you need. So I don't know if you, like I said, go back and re-listen to this section because there was a lot of gold dropped there. Oh my gosh, Andy. Yes, yes, yes. That I think too was recognizing that both sides feel the same. We all come to the table. We've said this many times. Men and women are speaking the same language. We're just not saying the same words or in the sequence that we would recognize it immediately. I think, when you see where's that book? The men are from
Mars, women are from Venus.
Yeah. So however that's it. Yeah. So that book and you recognize someone is onto something. Yes, we're different. Of course, that's great. But we're all individually, whether we're female or male, we are all different. And that's great. We're individuals. We all think differently. We all may have the same experiences. And we may actually go through life, maybe similar paths, but we're going to base it off our own individual inner feelings, like how we process our own brain, because we're not all thinking the same thing, or we might think partially the same, but we're not necessarily going to have the same experience. But I love the fact that you brought it up, that both sides feel the same, because when you think about it, if we're individual, we're going through life from our and coming up with our own way of dealing with relationships, whether friends, family, peers, or romantic, and we're basing some of our experiences and how we approach those relationships based on our past. So when we bring that both sides, again, we might have traveled some of similarities because you and I have some similarities, but we still experience it a little differently, and we processed it a little differently, and we got ourselves to the places that we needed to be, but it took us different paths. We did different things, and that's great. Recognizing that is going to be really truly helpful, I think, in answering this question. Is it a problem or a symptom? Because a lot of what you said comes from doing the inner, like turning it inward. That's, I think, the biggest gift I gave to myself was doing my own self-development journey, because it allowed me to build myself up, to help myself to really love the person that's staring back at me in my reflection, and be confident in who I am as a person and what I bring to my relationship, which is like in less than 3 months, I'll be married 27 years. And the last 3 years, maybe the last 2, even 1.5, let's even just go back even like that, not even that long ago, where I started realizing that my relationship could be better. We've had these conversations where I've told you like things are better. I felt more seen, heard, and understood because I did the inner work. And that allowed me to, as you had brought up, serve from the space what he needs, not what I need. And in turn, he understood because it's learning to understand each other and meet each other where we're at. It allowed him to feel seen, heard, and understood himself. And we both then started to recognize, what do you need? How can I serve that place for you? That's what it comes down to. So I love that. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah. Well, and it really comes down to that. When we're taking advantage of, we're offering something that isn't being received or valued in the level that we're offering it. Or what they're taking, we value more than they do. Right? So maybe they're taking more of what we want, more of what we're offering. Or maybe they're wanting something we're not offering. And that's usually because what we don't want to offer it because it's too important to me. I still need it. I don't have enough of it. I don't have abundance of it. Or what you're taking is more than I have an abundance of. Right? If I only have 5 hours a week, but you're taking 20, now I'm feeling taken advantage of. It's not because I didn't have extra. It's because you took more than I have. And that's where we get taken advantage of. And what happens if that person doesn't think that 20 hours a week is too much to ask? What happens if they offer their friends 30 hours a week? What happens if they're offering everybody else much more time than they're asking for? Then they think that they're being taken advantage of, right? This is how relationships, generally speaking, would work. Generally speaking, and I'm going to say 80 to 90% of the time when one side is taking advantage of or is feeling taken advantage of, so does the other side. There is the odd time when it doesn't. I've got a couple of friends who one person feels taken advantage of in that friendship and the other person doesn't. But 90% of the time, 80 to 90% of the time, one person, or when one person does, so does the other side. Both feel taken advantage of. And if you examine the conversations that you've had with this person, you'll probably hear some language that sounds familiar. Maybe different words, like you said, but it'll sound familiar. Like they're thinking you're taking advantage of them. You're thinking they're taking advantage of you. And generally speaking, those are symptoms of something deeper going on. Why do you feel that it's better to give than it is to take? Why do you think it's better to give than to take care of yourself, than to give to you first? Why does your emotional security come from someone else instead of yourself? Right? And examine those and then heal those.
Yeah. And I think also it comes down to, are you even asking for what you want?
Yeah.
You know, that are you clearly articulating what it is that you want from a place where it's not blaming? I think there's been times where hubby's going out. I know there's times where people are thinking, well, this person is taking what I'm not willing to give, but are you actually expressing how you feel, and in a way where it's not where you're blaming the other person or making them feel bad? Because I think if you can do that from a place where there's not necessarily no emotion attached, but you're not emotionally expressing it, because of course everything that we do, we are emotional beings, and so there is emotion behind how we feel about something, but can we articulate it from the place where we're not emotionally like so caught up in it, so that we can actually ask what we want, express it in a way where it's not blaming the other person, but so that we can then sit back and really allow ourselves to listen to their response. That will help us, I then think, to realize, okay, well, maybe they don't get what I really want. So how can I express that for them? You know, again, maybe you don't even really know what you want. This whole I'm being taken advantage of, especially in a romantic relationship, maybe you don't really know what it is that you want in your relationship or in a relationship. And so, and that could come from the level of how you feel about yourself. Again, doing that inner work first, when you can look at the person that you are without judging or criticizing yourself, and then say, well, what do I bring to the table? What do I want in return? I think that will help a lot better to then be able to express what you actually want from another person once you are in that relationship. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's exactly true. It's sometimes, most of the time even, we don't know precisely what it is we want. And I use the word precisely because we know vaguely what we want. I want to be more loved. I want to be respected. I want to be treated better. Oftentimes people will come to me and say, yeah, I've already done the boundaries thing. I've already set up a bunch of boundaries. I told them if they keep treating me this way, I'm leaving. What's this way? What way are they treating you? Give me some specific examples of what they're doing. Have you set up boundaries around those specific examples? Or have you just said, if you keep treating me this way, I'm leaving? Do they know what this way means? Are you assuming that they know, but they don't actually know? When I work with people to set up boundaries, it's very, very specific around the events themselves. Did you do the dishes when I asked you to? Have you met me at work when I asked you to? Have you come to bed with me 4 nights a week instead of staying up playing video games every night? Have you done the things that I want? Am I very specific with my boss? If I have a problem, this is how I want you to tell me about it. If you don't tell me about it like this way, I won't recognize it. I have one client who has a very difficult time getting into her computer because of some physical limitations. So she doesn't get into her computer all that often. And yet all the professionals and people that she deals with on a daily basis, they're emailing her all the time. She doesn't have email on her phone. She only has it on her computer. And she has asked every one of them, please phone or text me when there's an email I have to answer right away. Because I only go in there once or twice a week. So and they still don't, right? It's still a boundary. They've still disrespected it. And yet they get mad at her when she doesn't answer them right away. And she's like, okay, well, I've made this request of you. If you want to communicate with me, this is the best way to do so, because it's difficult for me to get into my email so often, right? So it's a situation. If you want to set up boundaries, be very, very specific. That client could say, none of these people respect me. And she's right. But saying that doesn't help them change respecting her. Saying if I have an email I should answer right away, text me or phone me, that's specific, right? That's how to respect me. It's one of the biggest problems that people have with boundaries is they set them up around emotions, not around specific actions. I just want you to love me. If you can't love me, I gotta go. I just want you to be respectful of me. If you can't respect me, we can't be friends anymore. What does that even mean? Right? I promise you and I have been friends for some time now. And I still promise you that if you said respect me more, I had no idea what you were talking about.
Of course.
I'd have no clue. If you said you need to treat me better, what does that even mean? And you and I have been friends and we know each other for quite a while. That doesn't mean anything. A lot of times clients will come to me, yeah, but he knows me. He knows better. Does he? If he did, you think he'd not? So you're telling me that he knows what he's supposed to do and he's intentionally choosing to disrespect you. If that's what he's doing, why is he in a relationship with you? Why did he choose you? Why is he still your friend? I mean, if he's going to be intentionally mean, wouldn't it be better for him just to go find somebody he'd have to be mean to? Like, why would he be in that relationship if he knows better and is intentionally being, a jerk about it? Why would they do that? It doesn't make sense to me. Right? So the biggest problem usually is we're not specific with what we want. That's usually one of the first things I work with clients about.
Yeah. And I love what you said, like that boundary for your client specifically around, the email situation is having that, I need you to do this because I'm not in my email. but maybe even going a step further saying, but the consequences of you not reaching out to me the way I've asked you to is that means that I won't respond to you as quickly as you need. And if it's time sensitive, it's not going to get done. It's like laying it out in a way that, oh, so yeah, this is the consequences, and not necessarily putting it back on ourselves saying that it's not going to get done is like, this just means that really it's on them to, this is what I've asked for. And if you're not willing to meet me there, that means that your question will go unanswered until I'm back in there checking my emails. So the one final place I think now, since we're coming up on the hour, is the one question you had written in the description was, is this the problem? They're really just using you, or is this a symptom? Are you somehow enabling them to use you? So I'd like to go into that a little bit, because I think the enable thing might really ruffle some feathers. But listen, I think this is something really truthfully, that if this is how you're feeling, to maybe take a closer look at. Because again, it could come down to the reason why this is happening is because you feel that you're being taken advantage of, is because there's that deeper level, maybe issue that your self-worth isn't where you would like to be, and your external validation allows you to feel worthy. So that means you don't say no, you say yes all the time. And in a way, what you're doing, that could be that you're enabling the other person to what you believe is taking advantage of you. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are, but maybe, again, like as I was saying in the beginning, my husband comes to me for everything that comes to like what I would call secretarial, meaning assistant duties. That's how I was like framing it in my head, believing he was taking advantage of me. Like, can you do this for me? Can you do it for me now? And realizing, as we've talked about it, that it's really coming from a place where he feels more confident that I'll do it quicker, that I'll do it more accurately, and that he will like the results a lot better than if he did it himself. But until I recognized that, I was looking at it, he's taking advantage of my time. He's taking advantage of me. Why can't he do it himself? So that was, I think, that, and when I was able to reframe that, I understood that after, we talked about it, and I started realizing, oh yeah, that really makes more sense. But what about where someone is maybe unknowingly enabling someone, and then that's where they're feeling that they're being used, that they're being taken advantage of?
Right. So first of all, there's a few words in the English language I don't like to use, and enable is one of them. But I put that in the description on purpose. I don't like the word enabling because enabling says that somehow our fault that they're doing something wrong, and I don't believe that's a good thing. Like, I don't believe that's true. First of all, if we're enabling somebody, it's because we have a thing inside of us, a need that we don't know about or that we're not acknowledging. When I'm enabling somebody to use me, that's because they, by them using me, they're somehow filling up something inside of me that I don't want to admit to or that I don't know about. When I'm enabling somebody, they're giving me attention, even if it's like the kid who gets negative attention because he can't get positive attention. When I'm enabling somebody, they're giving me attention, even if it's not the attention I want. When I'm enabling somebody, they're needing me, even if it's not the needs I want to fulfill. Right? I feel needed, or I need to feel needed. I don't feel like anybody wants to be around me. So if I'm needed, people won't want to be around me. If they need me, then I won't lose them. And as long as I fulfill that need, then they'll always be there. But what happens if what they need is not something I have lots left over to give? What happens if what they need is something that I'm also shy on, that I'm also low on? Then I could be being taken advantage of, and I'm enabling them to take advantage of me, because if I let them take advantage of me, they will leave. Right? And that's what enabling looks like. However, I don't like the word enabling because it denies that both sides have a need. I'm enabling them to do this thing. Yeah, that's because I have a need. It's because they're giving me something that they're fulfilling the contract. It's a secret contract. It's a hidden contract. It's a contract I don't even exist most of the time, but they're still fulfilling the contract.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not fulfilling. They're filling the small print, not the large print. They're not doing the thing that we agreed on, but who they need. They are fulfilling something, right? It's that when we enable somebody, they're giving us something and we're giving them something. It's just not the things we agreed on. So that's where that comes from. If we're enabling them to take advantage of us, ask yourself, why am I not willing to let them just go somewhere else to get what they need? Why am I not willing to let them go find somebody else to meet those needs? Why? What is the thing they give me? And when we figure out what that is, ask myself, if this is the need I have, am I really willing to meet that need somewhere else, or do I need them to do it? Because often when there's a deep need that we're not facing or that we're not admitting to, that's where the problem actually is. Focus on solving that problem, because if you focus on solving that problem, the need goes away, the being taken advantage of goes away, the hidden contracts go away. Mm-hmm. Right? That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, and I think too is what you also touched on was, what is it that I'm needing from them, or vice versa, they're needing from me, that either I'm feeling being taken advantage of because they're always coming to me, or maybe I'm taking advantage of someone else because I need something from them. And it could be just from vice versa. One person needs to feel like their needs are being met, and one person needs to feel like they're needed to help meet those needs, right? And so it just comes down to that. But we're coming up real close, and I thought, this is really, you've really dropped a lot of nuggets today. Like, the gold is there, and I'm hoping, especially because this is really in your wheelhouse around the around the emotional, the needs of each other, especially when it comes to relationships. And a lot of your clients, whether they're friendships that you've got some clients who have friendships which are, they're actually going through this particular question and trying to figure that out. And you've also got your romantic relationships that you're also helping them to figure out the question or the answer to that question. And it really isn't about you telling them the answer. You're helping them to pull it out of themselves. So I thought, who better to take us out, close out this today than my amazing unconditional relationship coach, Andy Lidstone. So I'm going to leave the floor to you.
Thank you for all that praise. I'm blushing over here. This is my natural go-to is I don't deserve all the praise, but I mean, in deep down inside, I know better. I know better.
Yes.
I'm helping.
Well
people,
deserved.
right? So
yeah.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I really do. I receive it well. I appreciate it. And yeah, this is my wheelhouse. This is what I do. This is what I created unconditional boundaries for, is to help people create better relationships, whether those are romantic relationships, friendships, family, work relationships, whatever the kind of relationship you want. Unconditional boundaries help create better relationships. We can set up barriers to keep people away from us. We can set up boundaries to invite people closer to us. These are the things that unconditional boundaries do differently than other boundaries. It's what separates unconditional boundaries from what normally people do with boundaries, is the ability to invite people into closer relationship with us, into a deeper, more intimate relationship with us. And this is why this is such a passion for me, because people want deeper relationships, and yet the only option we're given most of the time, especially here in North America, is to push people away. The only option we're giving when we're not getting exactly what we want, we're told by most of our friends and family, you need to set some boundaries and just get away from them. Just get away from this person. Just get away from that person. But what if I don't want that? What if that isn't what I'm looking for? What if I just, if they could understand what I'm looking for more, I could have a better relationship. If you can communicate with your husband better, you might get a relationship something like Leslie's, right? You've got a great relationship because you learned how to communicate, first of all, with yourself, and second, with your husband. I mean, this is what brings good relationships together. This is how we create them. And that's my goal in life. Quite honestly, both of us have said this. This is our goal in life, is to bring people together, to help people find joy and happiness, both in themselves and in their relationships with each other. So thank you, everybody, for joining in on this conversation, for participating, for listening, for giving us your time and your ear. We really appreciate it. There's a lot going on here. There's just, it's just so much information. There's so many ways that we can improve our relationships. And I'm scared I'm not going to be able to fill up the next 5 minutes of time.
No, I really truly believe that what you said was perfect. I think really when it comes to answering, is it a problem or a symptom? Am I being taken advantage of? Or I'm being taken advantage of, is really, it really just comes down to knowing yourself and what it is you're actually wanting out of the relationship. A lot of people don't take the time to look at that, a relationship in general, like even like before they even get into a relationship, what am I looking for and what am I willing to bring to the table? They just jump in. That's just natural. That's what we've been. We just go out, we see somebody, we get attracted, we start talking, we build that emotional connection. We forget, we have some of these surface level conversations in the beginning, and then we start building on it if it feels like we want to take it further. But some of the times we're forgetting or we're glossing over, asking some of these, I believe, are more importantly, the questions to sustain the relationship is like, what am I really wanting from a relationship, from this relationship, or a relationship in general? And what am I willing to give? And then am I even in that emotional place to give it? Because sometimes we're not even there. We don't like ourselves enough. We don't love ourselves at all. And so for us to go into a romantic relationship is really hard because we already are going in wounded. Like we're not whole. And when you go into a relationship where you're already wounded, you're going to start looking at your patterns from your past or patterns of past relationships, maybe bringing those relationships into your conversations, into your interactions, not necessarily wanting to do that, but it just happens because someone does something similar to a past experience. And then you start remembering all of those things. And that's just natural. But I think the question would really be helpful to ask yourself, what am I really wanting and what am I willing to give? And then the next one is, how do I even feel about myself so that I can actually give to a relationship to make it whole? Those are the questions I had to answer, not only first taking my own development journey where I learned about self-development and bettering myself, but also learning to love the person that I am, and without being judgmental or critical about my life. And then being able to then surround myself with really good people that I can talk to about where I'm at, things that I'm going through, asking for guidance from people like yourself who you are in this wheelhouse, and helping me to see ways to, okay, well, if that's an idea that I can maybe bring into my own journey, so I can then start recognizing how to get out of the relationship what I'm looking for, and being able to give what their needs are, thereby filling my own needs and them helping them fill their own, and then we can do it together, but learning first for myself. And I think that was learning that, going through my own journey for these past 6 years, and really recognizing and growing, has helped me to learn that it's not necessarily that I'm being taken advantage of. in my relationship. It was learning to communicate my needs in a way that was understood and not giving what I needed, but actually giving what the other person needed and filling my own needs first as well.
Yeah.
Teach, and being able to come from that place. And I think that's really helped. So I truly appreciate this conversation, Andy. Like I said, if you guys did not, we are going over the hour and that is okay. But if you guys did not hear what he had to say quite a few minutes ago, but he dropped a lot of gems. In fact, the entire episode, he's dropped a lot of gold here. Go back and listen to this episode again, because it'll truly help you to start looking at how to start looking for the questions based around the things that he said, which will help you if you start answering the questions that he was guiding you towards. I think it'll help you to answer that question. Is it that you're feeling that you're being taken advantage of, or is it just something that's a symptom of a deeper level symptom, which could be that you can't say no, which is a deeper level symptom of a problem of maybe your self-worth isn't where it should be. So thank you, Andy. I appreciate you so much. This was a great conversation. As always, I enjoy these. Yeah, it was a great conversation. I really enjoy these conversations with you. And I don't mind it when we go over, because, sometimes we just have to, right? We can go on.
Sometimes forever. It's just so much to say.
Yeah, we love to talk, and we definitely love talking with each other. So thank you so much for tuning in. We would love for you to share, comment, whatever that is, subscribe. But not necessarily because we want to build ourselves up. We want to build you, our audience, up, but also to get the message out there for people who really need to hear this today, because maybe they're struggling and they just need someone to give them a different thought process around a question that they've been trying to answer for themselves. So that's one of the reasons, probably the biggest reason we ask you to do this. But again, thank you, Andy. Thank you all.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. These are great conversations. Thank you, Leslie, for all the praise and love that you've thrown this way today. It comes from self-love first. If you don't do the things that you teach, you can't do the things that I teach. Right? You have to learn to love yourself first. You have to learn you have to learn your own stuff. You have to go through your own journey first. And you can do that inside of a relationship. You don't have to be single first. You did it inside a relationship. That is what you teach, how to do this stuff while you're still partnered up. You don't have to be single first. Mm-hmm. I like that. So thank you for the praise. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And again, as Leslie said, like, share, subscribe, do all the things, comment, let us know what you want, what you think. We appreciate your participation. It does help this get out to more people so that we can serve more of you. And that's ultimately what we want to do. We just want to help more people like yourself. So help us do that by getting the word out and helping other people see that we're here. Yeah. Thank you. And we'll see you again next week.
Yeah. Have a great week. We'll see you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.